Hey, this is Josh. Welcome to my garage. As you can see, Goldie, my project Corvette, which hasn't moved in an entire year, is gone. And honestly, that is a relief. Because it's at a local shop where they're trying to figure out what went wrong when they tried to flash it with a bass tune for Goldie's new engine. Well, a few days of Goldie being at the shop stretched into a couple of weeks, and I'm starting to feel anxious. But then my buddy Andrew at Vengeance Racing sends me a text to say that Goldie has a brand new ECU and she's ready to come home, and I am very excited. Andrew even busts out a wrench to see if we can get rid of my pesky exhaust leak that seems to be coming from the headers. It didn't fix the leak, but it's the thought that counts. And just like that, it's time for Goldie's second drive with her new motor. On the way home, I'm reminded that the exhaust leak is not the only issue. I notice what sounds like a clunk in the suspension, but after playing around to make it happen, I think it's just my racing brake pads rattling in the calipers.
I think we're hearing pad knock. Definitely something right hand side towards the front.
Speaking of the brakes, the pedal is dangerously mushy, but they do work after you pump them up a little bit. I've got oil pressure, which is good.
Our oil pressure is what I would characterize as alarming at 103 psi.
But yeah, 103 psi is kind of scary high. I'm trying not to be alarmed, but in the back of my head is the idea that I did something wrong when I assembled the engine. And it doesn't help that a few of you called into question my oil pump installation. So I'm putting on a brave face, but this seems like a bad sign. And there's a whole laundry list of other issues.
Low tire pressure, all the way around, low fuel. She sounds pretty rowdy, and the whole car.
One thing that I noticed, and I'm not mad about it, but it seems like this camshaft that I thought was going to be very streetable is way more aggressive feeling than I expected. The entire car shakes at idle. I was expecting my GT3 killer to be a little more refined, you know, like a GT3. But man, it's hard to beat a choppy cam on an LS. The tendency to stall that she had on the first drive is gone, so this tune is obviously working. And all that really matters is she's running and driving, and I'm bringing her home.
We are home. Oh, come on.
So let's update the whiteboard with the things that need to be addressed. I'm getting low tire pressure warnings, and so an easy win is to just inflate the tires, or so you would think. But my wife's SRT Durango got stolen, and it had my Milwaukee tire inflator and my two best GoPro cameras in the back. There's something that feels really crappy about being forced to rebuy stuff that was stolen from you. But what are you gonna do? I start messing around with the oil pressure sensor, but very quickly I realize that I'm doing things out of order. It's been over a year since Goldie got a bath. Washing a car is the most basic form of maintenance. It's the first thing I ever help my dad do with a car. It's the first thing I do when I buy a car. And I think you could argue that there's nothing more satisfying, especially on a nice spring evening. And it never fails, putting in the effort to wash a special car always makes me fall in love again and remember why I bought it in the first place. Goldie has been stationary for so long, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like to drive it whenever I want. Saturday morning rolls around and I just kind of wander out into the garage without a particular plan. I certainly wasn't planning to spend all day working on the car. Since one of my Milwaukee batteries got stolen, I figured it's a good time to bring an old one back to life using a trick I found on the internet. While that charges, I'll do something else battery related. I was thinking about replacing Goldie's alternator because it's been getting hotter than you would like, but then I found out that a good new alternator costs like $500, so I thought about it some more and I realized that a weak battery would possibly explain why the alternator is having to work overtime. Unfortunately, somebody cheaped out on the last battery replacement and this one doesn't have a handle on top. So I have to improvise with a ratchet strap. That was super easy and it definitely didn't take 20 minutes. Oh shoot, I forgot I was running a timer. So let's find out if my dead Milwaukee battery will take a charge now instead of showing an error message. I want to bleed the brakes, so we need to get the wheels off, and now I'm getting a little bit of deja vu because suddenly Goldie is going right back up on the quick jack. My axle boot that I replaced not too long ago had thrown some excess grease, and as I cleaned the barrel of the wheel, I noticed something really annoying. The shop that mounted the tires on my brand new forged Apex wheels scratched the wheels, and then they used touch-up paint so I wouldn't notice.
Those motherfuckers don't go anywhere.
Literally brand new wheels. But in brighter news, it looks like my old battery actually did take a charge. I was really proud of this, but then when I used it, it drained the battery almost immediately and then it wouldn't charge again. It threw the same error message. So I guess that was a fail, but it was worth a try. I want to see if there's any new grease on the suspension that would tell me that the boot is still leaking, but there's no sign of any, so I think we're good. I've bled Corvette brakes many times with my Motive Speed Bleeder, but I still haven't learned how to use a scan tool to do it the right way and purge the ABS system. But I did look up the correct bleed order thanks to a viewer comment, which is right rear, left front, left rear, right front, which is totally weird, but I'm fine with that. There is something unbelievably relaxing about working on your car in your safe, dry garage while there's a big thunderstorm coming down outside. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. One of the rear calipers had lots of bubbles in it, so that was almost certainly the source of my mushy brake pedal. But of course I didn't get that one on camera. And now the pedal feels nice and firm. Ooh, some boxes came from Amazon. This is a mechanical pressure gauge I can use if I need to test my actual oil pressure. What is this? Oh crap, this is the new scan tool I bought so I could properly bleed the ABS system. I guess that'll have to wait until the next time I bleed the brakes.
That was very satisfying.
One of my viewers recommended this particular model and I've been using it a lot more than I expected. I really like it, so I'll put a link to it in the description. I picked up a new battery at Napa and I paid extra for the premium version that comes with a handle because I want future Josh to be happy. and it goes in smooth, just like warm butter. Something that was lingering on my list is removing the clutch return spring. Monster recommends this when you install one of their clutches to improve the pedal feel. It'll be a bit heavier but more linear without the spring. I noticed that the take-up point of the clutch is pretty high in the pedal travel, but that's not the spring's fault. It's definitely heavier, but still very reasonable. It's time to tackle this oil pressure issue. I'm really hoping that I can get lucky and it's just a problem with the sensor, but typically when a sensor goes bad, it just pegs the gauge at 130 psi, which is the max it'll show. And mine is acting like a working gauge, it's just reading high pressure. From what I've read, you're probably not damaging engine internals until you're above 120 psi or so, but I'm getting dangerously close to that. I think I saw a max of 117 psi. One theory is that my oil pump has a failed pressure relief valve, which would be a gigantic pain to replace. I had a couple of other theories, and thankfully I was able to use old video footage to debunk those. A couple of you pointed out that I didn't show the oil diverter barbell being installed, but I was able to find a clip that showed it was already installed in the short block when I got it from K-Tech. Although that wasn't a very good theory to begin with because I don't think it would have caused high oil pressure. Now, Dr. Bobby told me he could have the manifold off in about 5 minutes, but there must be something wrong with me because it took at least an hour.
First try.
Then I started to wonder if I had wired my oil pressure sensor backwards when I replaced the wiring harness in the last video. But the footage showed pretty clearly that I did it correctly, and if it was backwards, I would expect the oil pressure reading to go down as you rev the engine, which mine wasn't doing. So I gave my buddy Trent a call. He's been a huge help all through this project, and he came up with a great idea. He suggested that I could use a multimeter to test the signal coming from my sensor and then compare that to the working sensor from the old engine. If this works, Trent is a hero, but if it doesn't, then the intake manifold has to come off and on a couple of times because I'll need to use the mechanical gauge to measure the actual oil pressure. It also took me a little while to figure out how to consistently measure the signal off of the oil pressure sensor, but I did figure it out eventually.
What up?
Hey dude, I'm going to include you in the video on speakerphone. So I've got the car is, Louie, now's not the time. I've got the car turned on. I've got the original sensor plugged in. I'm gonna put the red probe on signal and the black probe on ground, and I get 0.49 volts, okay?
That checks, yeah. Okay.
Now I'm gonna switch to the K-Tech. Well, not K-Tech, but the one that was on the motor, on the valley cover when I got it, right? The problematic one in theory. And when I perform the same test, instead of 0.49, I get, what do you think, same thing or different?
Higher.
0.795. I also noticed when with that one plugged in, oh shit, where just that? I just opened up my, the one that I got from Napa and something went flying. Why would there be a little filter screen in there?
Unfortunately, Google doesn't exist, so I guess I'll never know what that little filter screen was for. And frankly, I'm not even very curious.
Weird. Anyway, I'm going to plug in the Napa one and do the same test because it's brand new.
That's even better, yeah. I mean, because those voltages have a discrete oil pressure number in the computer.
Right.
0.49 is not equal to 0.79 or whatever it was.
Right.
Definitely.
No, yeah. The Napa one reads 0.579. So a little different, but much closer.
Yeah, and like I was telling you, I don't think the scale is linear.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's gonna have more resolution at the operating pressure.
The new one from Napa and the original one are very close. The one that was previously being used is way off. And then I also noticed, just turning the car on and looking at the oil pressure gauge with the one in it that was giving us bad readings, it was reading 10 on the gauge with 0 pressure.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I'm pleased that I pulled the intake manifold off to do this, and that you came up with that test, because now I feel confident I'm going to put the new Napa one on because it doesn't have 50,000 miles on it. Would that make sense to you?
Yeah! Trent came through clutch on this one, and I'm very confident that the sensor was the cause of my problem, although I can't say what went wrong. Could I have just gotten the wrong part? Or could my sensor be defective? If you know about these things, I'd love to see some theories in the comments. And I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. I need to get this thing reassembled and started up to test it. Since I'm in a hurry, I think we're going to need a montage, but before we can kick it off, I should take a moment to fill my power steering reservoir. Alright, it's montage time. Hit it, Jack. By the way, this is the first ever video on my channel that's been edited by somebody else. And thanks to Jack, we're going to get this video out a week after the previous one instead of the 4 to 12 weeks it usually takes me. I had told Trent about how much air was in my brake caliper, and he asked if I knew why it had so much air in it, which was an excellent question. So I put a wrench on the banjo bolt that holds the brake line to the caliper, and it was loose enough to explain how air got in the first place. Oh, that is a relief. The pressure looks normal. Goldie's engine is safe and sound.
Oops.
This is the moment I've been waiting for a very long time. Taking Goldie out for a drive on country roads on a beautiful evening.
Dog, up, man. Stop playing. This shit ain't working, man.
This is what it's all about, boys.
It's got an exhaust leak, so it's making, there's kind of sound that it's making. Hear that?
Yeah.
Can you believe it? I built that motor.
brakes are good, I'm getting used to the clutch, and it just feels so good to go out for a drive. But knowing what I know now, I definitely should have been more concerned about that exhaust leak. I hate to keep you in suspense, but it looks like Goldie has at least one more story to tell, and as of this moment, I don't know if it's going to have a happy ending. Thanks for coming along for the ride. We'll see you next time.